They told her to move the rig and stop wasting their time. 20 minutes later, a blacked-out military convoy rolled onto that same highway and asked the troopers, very politely, to leave. The way station on Route 9 outside Caldwell, Nevada had seen its share of truckers, thousands of them, rolling through every year, hauling grain and steel and refrigerated beef across the high desert. The officers who staffed it had developed a routine: pull them in, check the paperwork, run the axle weights, send them on. The good ones were done in 4 minutes. The difficult ones took longer. And every now and then, somebody came through who made the whole shift feel like a waste of a uniform. Marina Vasquez pulled her rig into the way station at 7:14 in the morning. The truck was a 2009 Kenworth T680, sand-colored and road-scarred. The passenger side door held shut with a bungee cord that she kept meaning to fix properly. The trailer behind it carried industrial filtration equipment, sealed on a wooden pallet base, declared at 14,000 pounds. The paperwork was in a green folder on the dash. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. She had done this run 11 times in the past 2 years, and not once had there been a problem. That morning, there was a problem. Officer Dale Prescott was 26 years old, 8 months into his assignment at the Caldwell station, and still wore the look of a man who had expected something more from life. He was tall and blond, and he walked the way certain young men walk when they have recently been given authority, like the ground owed them something. He came around to the driver's side of the Kenworth and stood there a moment before Marina rolled down the window, as if the extra seconds were some kind of power being exercised. She handed him the green folder without being asked. He looked at her before he took it. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes the color of old creek water, gray-green and completely still. She wore a faded olive work jacket over a gray thermal shirt. There was a scar along her left jaw, thin and pale, almost invisible unless the light caught it a certain way. She looked like someone who had been tired for a long time and had made her peace with it. "Marina Vasquez," Prescott said, reading the license. "That's right. You hauling solo?" "Always." He flipped through the folder slowly, not reading it, just turning pages. She had seen this before. It was a performance. The papers were all in order, and he would find that out when he actually looked, but the turning of pages meant something to him. It said, "Your time is mine right now." "Filtration equipment," he said. "Industrial grade, going to a water treatment facility outside Reno. Bill of lading is on page 3. He did not turn to page 3. He closed the folder and handed it back. Then he leaned against the door frame in a way that she found immediately familiar and deeply unpleasant. It was the lean of someone who had made a decision about you before you opened your mouth. "You are 6 inches over on your rear axle spread," he said. Marina was quiet for a moment. "I don't believe that's correct." "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying the load was weighed and certified at the depot in Elko. The certificate is in that folder." Prescott smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "See, the thing about depot certifications is they sometimes don't account for load shift. You've been on the road a few hours. Things move." He shrugged. "I'm going to have to pull you out of the lane and do a full inspection." "How long will that take?" "Depends how cooperative the driver is." He pushed off the door frame. "Pull her around to Bay 4. She pulled the rig to Bay 4 and climbed down slowly, favoring her right side slightly, an old habit built from something she never talked about. She stood beside the truck and waited while Prescott called in a second officer, a younger man named Ellis, who seemed uncomfortable with something he couldn't name. Prescott walked around the trailer with a clipboard, measuring things that didn't need measuring, writing things down he would probably throw away later. The sun was climbing and the desert was bright, and there wasn't much else going on. "You run this route often?" he asked, not looking up. "Regularly. By yourself?" "Yes." He glanced at her. "Most female drivers I see on this stretch run smaller rigs. This is a heavy setup for a solo driver." "I'm aware of what I'm driving," Marina said. He held her gaze for a moment, reassessing something. Then he looked back at his clipboard. "I need you to open the trailer." She opened the trailer. He spent 11 minutes looking at filtration equipment he clearly didn't understand, and had no particular reason to inspect. Ellis stood near the front of the truck, occasionally glancing back at Marina with something close to apology. She noticed this. She had learned, over many years and in many places, to notice the people in a group who weren't sure they belonged there. When Prescott finished, he came back with the clipboard. "I'm going to write you up for the axle spread," he said. "On what measurement?" "My measurement." Marina looked at him for a long time. She was not angry. She was something quieter and harder than angry. She had a way of looking at people that made them feel, without her saying anything, like she was filing them somewhere in her mind for later reference. "Is there a supervisor on duty?" she asked. Prescott's jaw tightened. "That would be me." "Then I would like a copy of the measurement report with the specific instrument calibration date." He stared at her. She waited. Behind him, Ellis found something very interesting to look at on the far side of the lot. Prescott wrote out the citation slowly, making a show of it, and handed her the yellow copy. "You're also blocked in Bay 4 for the duration of the documentation process. Shouldn't be more than 45 minutes. Maybe an hour." He tucked the clipboard under his arm. "You can wait in the cab." He walked away. Marina looked at the yellow citation, folded it carefully, and put it in the front pocket of her work jacket. She climbed back into the cab and sat very still in the driver's seat for a long time, not looking at her phone, not listening to the radio, just breathing slowly with her hands flat on her thighs. Outside, Prescott stood near the office talking to another officer, occasionally glancing over at the Kenworth. Marina reached across to the glove box and opened it. Inside, beneath the registration and a small flashlight, was a photograph. It was old and slightly creased, printed on the kind of matte paper that field printers used. It showed 7 people in desert gear, standing in front of something that had been blurred out, either deliberately or by damage to the photo. She was in the back row. She was younger, maybe 25, and she was smiling, which was not something she did often on Route 9. The 6 people around her were smiling too. One of them had a hand on her shoulder, a wide-shouldered man with a shaved head and sunglasses, and the kind of easy posture that belongs to people who have learned to be completely comfortable in extremely uncomfortable situations. Marina looked at the photograph for a moment. Then she put it back and closed the glove box. 43 minutes passed. Then something changed. She heard it before she saw it. A low, organized sound, not the random diesel rumble of highway traffic, but something deliberate and evenly spaced. She looked in the driver's side mirror. Far back on the highway, coming from the east, were vehicles, dark vehicles, moving at speed, moving together. 3 black SUVs in a tight formation, followed by 2 LMTV military transport trucks, the kind that don't travel civilian highways without a reason. Behind them, a 4th SUV. The whole column moved like something that had done this before, that knew exactly where it was going and had no interest in anything standing in between. The column turned into the Caldwell Way station. Prescott came out of the office. He stood in the lot with his thumbs hooked in his belt and watched them come in. His expression was that of a man trying to decide whether to look important or simply confused. He settled on important. It was the wrong choice. The lead SUV stopped. A man stepped out who was not dressed the way Prescott had expected anyone to be dressed. He wore no uniform, dark slacks and a gray jacket, and he moved with the particular economic grace of someone who had spent a long time deciding exactly how to move through space. He was perhaps 50, weathered face, close-cut silver hair. He took in the lot, the Kenworth, the open trailer door, Officer Ellis, and Prescott, in one full second. He walked to Prescott. "Officer," he said. His voice was low and unhurried. "I need to ask you a few questions about the driver of that rig." Prescott straightened slightly. "You are?" The man produced an identification case and held it open for exactly the right amount of time, enough to be seen, not enough to be examined. "Federal. We're looking for a freight operator who came through this corridor this morning. Solo driver, Kenworth T680, carrying industrial equipment." "That's her," Prescott said, tilting his head toward the Kenworth. He allowed himself a small private smile. "She's been detained. Axle spread violation. Routine." The silver-haired man looked at him for a moment without speaking. Then he looked at the Kenworth, then back at Prescott. She's been detained, he repeated. That's right, going on 45 minutes, maybe another 15 before the documentation clears. The silver-haired man turned to one of the agents behind him, who immediately walked to the second SUV and got on a phone. Then he turned back to Prescott. I'm going to need you to clear her, he said. It was not phrased as a request. Prescott's smile faded. Sir, there's a documented citation. Clear her. A silence opened up in the lot. Ellis had moved several feet away from the situation, instinctively. Prescott held his ground for exactly one more second. The last second in which he still believed this was a conversation between equals, and then something in the silver-haired man's expression closed a door that had been open. I'll need to verify your jurisdiction, Prescott said. His voice had changed. The silver-haired man said, We're running a federal corridor operation. This driver is a documented participant in that operation. Her vehicle was authorized for uninterrupted transit 14 hours ago. He paused. The citation will be withdrawn. You can confirm that with your district supervisor, whose office I have already contacted. You should be receiving a call in approximately 4 minutes. He turned away from Prescott and walked to the Kenworth. He came around to the driver's side door. Marina had already rolled down the window. She was looking down at him with the same still gray-green eyes, the same lack of surprise that she had shown throughout the entire morning. Hey, Vasquez, he said quietly. She looked at him for a moment. You dress like a senator. He almost smiled. You said that last time. It's still true. She glanced toward Prescott, who was now standing very still by the office door, visibly not looking at anything. He was just doing his job. Badly, but his job. We need to move. They've opened the corridor, but there's a 30-minute window. I know. I heard your convoy from the highway. She said this the way someone mentions the weather. The second LMTV has a belt running tight. You should have someone check it before the mountains stretch. The silver-haired man held her gaze for a moment. Then he made a small hand signal to the second transport. A figure climbed out and went to the vehicle's hood. You want a window position? He asked her. 20 meters off your last truck, and I'll match your pace on the grades. Done. He started to walk away, then stopped. Marina, I heard about Hargrove 6 weeks ago. Something moved behind her eyes briefly, like a shadow crossing still water. I heard. He would have wanted to know you were all right. He always did, she said, and she rolled the window halfway up. She pulled the Kenworth out of Bay 4 at 8:41 in the morning. The convoy waited on the highway, engines running. She merged in behind the last SUV at exactly 20 meters, exactly as she had said. The column moved. The belt problem on the second LMTV took 6 minutes to correct at the roadside. A tension issue, exactly as she had called it. The convoy didn't lose significant time. Out on the highway, Marina ran at the back of the column and thought about Marcus Hargrove, who had been the unit's logistics coordinator for 6 years, and who could read a terrain map faster than most people read a sentence. Hargrove, who had a habit of whistling the first 4 bars of the same song over and over without ever getting to the 5th, and who had once fixed a broken field radio with a piece of copper wire and 2 minutes of careful attention. He had been 53 years old and had retired to a small farm in eastern Oregon where he raised chickens and apparently was bad at it, because he had sent her a photograph of his chickens once with a message that said, I believe I have made a series of professional errors. She had laughed at that photograph for longer than she usually laughed at things. She had not called when he went down. She would not explain this to anyone, because the reasons were inside her in a place she kept carefully closed. She had lit a candle instead in a gas station outside Winnemucca, one of those long-burning white ones, and she had left it burning on the shelf behind the cash register after asking the attendant if it was all right to leave it there. He had said yes without asking why. She had driven the next 6 hours in silence. The mountains rose ahead. The road began to climb. She shifted down through the grades with the ease of someone doing something they have done so many times that the body handles it while the mind rests. She knew this stretch of highway the way she had once known other terrain, intimately, systematically, as a place with features that could be exploited or avoided depending on what the situation required. She knew every grade change, every rest area, every stretch where the wind came off the canyon walls and hit the broadside of a trailer like a flat hand. She knew where the cell coverage dropped and where it came back. She knew, from the feel of the road through the steering column, that there was a crack developing in the highway surface about 2 miles east of the Hatch Junction. Probably frost damage, probably 6 months from becoming a real problem. She had noted it on her last 3 runs. It had taken her a long time to think about the highway that way. In the beginning, after she left, she had simply driven. The movement was the point, the continuous passage through landscape, the way the miles accumulated without anyone asking where you were going or what you had done before. She had not wanted to be competent at anything for a while. She had wanted to be invisible. But old habits do not break by wanting. They go underground, and they wait. The convoy moved well. The repaired LMTV ran clean. The sky was a hard blue above the ridgeline, cloudless and enormous. At the summit junction, a highway patrol unit was parked on the shoulder. The officer inside watched the convoy pass. He watched the Kenworth come through behind it. He reached for his radio once, then set it down. Something about the configuration, the interval, the formation, the way the civilian truck sat in relation to the military vehicles, told him this was already handled. He was right. They came down the east face of the range at 10:47. The desert opened again into a long flat run toward the outer edge of Reno. Marina could see the city shimmering in the distance. The convoy was running well. The window had 44 minutes left. Her radio clicked once, the agreed signal, on time. She clicked back twice, confirmed. At 11:22, the convoy turned off the highway onto a service road that did not appear on any civilian map. 2 gate guards waved them through after a brief exchange. Marina followed the last SUV through the gate and brought the Kenworth to a stop in the designated area, set the brake, and climbed down. A man came out of the facility's side entrance, younger than the silver-haired man, in a utility uniform without insignia, moving with focused efficiency. He stopped when he saw Marina. He looked at her for a moment with the expression of someone encountering a fact they had been told but had not fully believed. "Vasquez," he said. "Cortez." He shook his head slowly. "I heard you were driving freight." "I am driving freight." He looked at the Kenworth, then back at her. "Right?" A pause. "You good?" She had been asked that twice today. "I'm fine." Cortez held out his hand. She shook it. His grip lingered a half-second longer than a professional handshake, the way a grip does when it's carrying something that isn't being said. She let it pass without comment. The silver-haired man came and stood beside her while the transfer was underway. The team inside the facility moved with the careful precision of people working around something that required it, and Marina tracked each step without appearing to. At one point, she said quietly, "The handler on the left is favoring his right hand," and the silver-haired man looked and radioed a swap before either of them said anything else about it. When it was done, he stood with her beside the Kenworth in the afternoon light. "I need you for the return corridor in 3 weeks," he said. "Send me the window. I'll decide the route when I see the conditions." He nodded. Then he reached into his jacket and took out something small. He held it in his palm for a moment before offering it to her. It was a challenge coin, heavy, brass-edged, with an insignia she recognized without looking closely. On the back, she knew without turning it, were 7 names. Hargrove's family sent one to everyone on the list he kept, the silver-haired man said quietly. His daughter found it in his things. She reached out. Marina took the coin. She held it in her hand for a moment, not turning it over. "She know what he did?" Marina asked. "She knows he served. She knows it mattered." Marina closed her fingers around the coin. The desert air was warm and dry, and the sky above the facility was that same hard, cloudless blue it had been all morning. "Tell her it did," Marina said. "Tell her he was the best at what he did and generous with it, and that there are people alive right now who wouldn't be without him." She paused. "Tell her the chickens were probably fine." The silver-haired man looked at her. "The chickens. He'd know what it means." She climbed back into the cab. She put the challenge coin in the glove box next to the photograph. She sat there for a moment with the glove box open, looking at both objects, the coin and the crease-worn photograph. 7 faces caught in whatever that day had been, in front of whatever they had been standing in front of, in a place that had since been redacted from the world's available information. She closed the glove box. She started the engine. Back at the Caldwell Way station, Officer Dale Prescott was filling out a correction form for the voided citation. His supervisor's call had been brief and clear. Administrative error, correct the record, no further action required. When he had tried to ask about the federal vehicles, the supervisor had said it was outside their jurisdiction to inquire further. Ellis came and leaned in the doorway. "You find anything on her?" "Nothing," Prescott said. "Clean license, 14 years on the road, no violations, no flags, nothing." She didn't seem like nothing. Prescott looked at the correction form. He thought about the way she had looked at him when he handed her the citation. Not angry, not afraid, just stiff and measuring and entirely in possession of something he didn't have a name for. "No," he said. "She didn't." He filed the form. He went back to his post. The highway outside was empty in both directions, running straight and pale through the desert to the horizon and then past it into whatever came after. Somewhere on that highway, a sand-colored Kenworth was already 3 hours ahead, running clean and steady, with a driver who had gray-green eyes and a challenge coin in her glove box and a candle she had left burning in a gas station outside Winnemucca. She was just a freight driver. She had been just a freight driver for 4 years now. She was, by every available measure, very good at it.